of the feeding of the 5,000. So our first text is from Exodus 16. In the evening, quails came up and covered the camp, and in the morning there was a layer of dew around the camp. When the layer of dew lifted, there on the surface of the wilderness was a fine, flaky substance, as fine as frost on the ground. When the Israelites saw it, they said to one another, "What is this?" For they did not know what it was. And Moses said to them, "It is the bread that the Lord has given you to eat. This is what the Lord has commanded. Gather as much of it as each of you needs, an omer to a person, according to the number of persons, all providing for those in your own tents." The Israelites did so, some gathering more and some less. But when they measured it with an omer, those who gathered much had nothing over, and those who gathered little had no shortage. They gathered as much as each of them needed. And our second text comes from John's Gospel, chapter 6. After this, Jesus went to the other side of the Sea of Galilee, also called the Sea of Tiberias. A large crowd kept following him because they saw the signs that he was doing for the sick. Jesus went up the mountain and sat there with his disciples. Now the Passover, the festival of the Jews, was near. When Jesus looked up and saw a large crowd coming toward him, Jesus said to Philip, "Where are we to buy bread for these people to eat?" He said this to test Philip, for Jesus himself knew what he was going to do. Philip answered him, 6 months' wages would not buy enough bread for each of them to get a little. One of the disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, said to him, "Well, there's a boy here who has 5 barley loaves and 2 fish. But what are they among so many people?" Jesus said, "Make the people sit down." Now there was a great deal of grass in the place, so they sat down, about 5,000 in all. And Jesus took the loaves, and when he had given thanks, he distributed them to those who were seated, and so also the fish, as much as they wanted. When they were satisfied, he told the disciples, "Gather up the fragments left over, so that nothing may be lost." So they gathered them up, and from the fragments of 5 barley loaves left by those who had eaten, they filled 12 baskets. And when the people saw the sign that he had done, they began to say, "This is indeed the prophet who is to come into the world." The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. So I'd like to do some imagination today, if you're game. I'd like to first imagine that we are our ancestors back in, having escaped Egypt, right? We have been slaves and making brick and mortar and this beautiful, beautiful city and cities for the Egyptians. All the while, we are in small little neighborhoods together, and we are growing, and there are a lot of us. And finally, God sets us free. And we are now in the wilderness together. And we're walking around, right? We're wandering from place to place, right? We set up tent. We tell our stories to one another. We have a fire. We eat and raise our children all together. But we are also weary and very worn by the experience behind us, and then also by this experience of having to keep walking and finding this place that God has promised us. And we're questioning, is God with us? Has God forgotten us? Does God see us where we are here? And while we are hungry and wondering if we will ever be able to hunt and gather enough to provide for ourselves and our children and our neighbors, I like to believe that it was a woman who first said, "I wonder what this substance is on the ground after the dew goes away," because I have a hard time believing Moses had time to do that. And so they start to gather it, And it probably was some old lady in the community who said, well, I'm going to boil it and see. And you know her daughter said, Mom, that sounds like the craziest idea in the world and a bad use of fire, right? No, I'm going to boil it. And they figure out they can boil it. And then someone tells Moses, and Moses says to the people, all right, here's what we're going to do. We're all hungry. I hear you. God is with us. This is how God has provided for us. I just want everyone to stop, because I could not get past this week, this question or this idea. They were looking for food that they understood to be food. They wanted God to provide for them food, you know, what you eat when you're humans. This was not in that category. This was an unknown substance right before their eyes that fit the category of food, but nobody in the community would have recognized it as what they were looking for. There's a whole sermon in that, and not where I'm going today, right? But like needing something and looking for something and praying for something and dare believing that the scriptures have told us our ancestors at one point were looking for something and needing something and wanting something, and it was right in front of them and they didn't know what it was, so they would never have picked it up and used it as the thing that they were wanting and praying for. So they make this substance and they pick up as much as they can. And they eat just enough every day. Just enough. And you know the story. I was talking to my mother about it, and I was trying to be all like, you know, postmodern about my reading of the scripture. And I said, well, Mom, you know, they didn't even know that it was there. You know, what if it was there for, you know, the whole time, and then like just finally some old lady picked it up and figured out how to boil it. You know, it was always there. And my mom said, but God provided it. And I said, well, I know, but I mean, maybe God provided it and they didn't really know. And like, you know, I mean, Mom, don't you know, it's really lice poop, right? It's a biological substance. It's not a miracle, again, right? I'm being very postmodern with my mother. If you haven't heard that manna is lice poop, sorry. Spoiler alert, it's lice poop. Like, it's a biological thing that happens. So I'm trying to tell my mom, and my mom said, well, I mean, then Beth, what do you make of the fact that it didn't spoil? It spoiled on 6 days of the week if they gathered too much, and then it didn't spoil on Sunday when they gathered for 2 days. And then I changed the subject on my mom. Never ends being a parent to any of your children. Doesn't matter how old they are. So they're considering this new kind of provision. And so they begin to think, we can trust. Maybe we can trust. And like I said, we know from Scripture, someone had to try to gather more than enough because they found out that it goes bad. And then someone had to figure out, like, how come it didn't go bad on the Sabbath? This is an interesting thing that's happening to us. One day at a time. That's what God provided. One day at a time. God is with us one day at a time. Now, on one hand, they were afraid of not having enough, and I dare say that we are often afraid of not having enough. And then on the other hand, we have all this memory and stories where we're deeply aware that God has been with us and is with us. So we hold in tension, like, I think I'm afraid a little bit. Will I have enough? Do I have enough? And God is with me. We hold those things in tension. We struggle with security. We fear scarcity in our world. And we wrestle with understanding what daily bread actually means. Now I want you to pretend we jump thousands of years ahead, and we are on a hillside. I'm using the quilt that the ladies and I have been fixing. If you remember, I brought this to our attention when I came, and it needed desperate help. And the little blue patches here represent little spaces that still need help, but everything else has been fixed. And then we're ready to make the back with our polka dots. So pretend with me we are on a hillside. with our people and our kids. And there is this man, Jesus, and he is teaching, and he's a miracle worker. He's healed people. I mean, that's why we've come, really, and that's why we're sticking around on the hill with our kids and with our neighbors. We're no longer in a desert anymore. I mean, not the way that our ancestors were in a desert, but we are in an interesting place where we don't have real rights anymore because the Roman Empire has taken over our land, and we no longer really have a space that we can really call our own, right? I mean, we have our homes and everything, but there are armed guards that walk the streets, and it's a fearful place where we live. And we're hungry too, right? We only have so many resources, right? We're not the wealthiest of the people who live here, and resources are kept, for some a little more than for others. And so we make do with what we have, and we take care of one another. And, it's getting to be a long day, and all of us have brought, if you ever travel with mothers of small children, mothers always have snacks somewhere, right? And so people are taking out their little bits of snacks, and they're, trying to calm their children down. I get it, it's a long day, and you're hungry, and there's a lot of commotion around, and as we're feeding our young ones, we hear Jesus' friends kind of coming through the crowd, and we notice that they're telling us all to kind of sit down in groups. And so we sort of gather our blankets together, and we squish together, and we make new friends, but we're mostly, we're finding people that we know, and we're sitting together. And then all of a sudden there's food that gets passed around. We have no idea where this food came from, right? Because it wasn't the little snacks that moms had stuck in their bags and things. But there's this food making itself around, and we take, a bite here, and we give it to our children, and then the next thing we know, it gets passed around again. So we all take another little bite, and then it's passed around until we're not hungry anymore. We still don't really know where this food came from. I mean, surely Jesus couldn't afford to pay to feed this group of people. I mean, that would be ridiculous. But we're not hungry anymore. And then it's funny, you hear someone, just close enough, telling the story of manna in the desert. And that story was smart enough to connect the dots. Like, yeah, that's kind of what happened. I mean, we're not in the desert, but we're on this mountain, and we're getting fed by, where did it come from? Maybe not manna, what is it? But where did it come from? Where is this food coming from? What is this gathering on the hillside? Who is this Jesus anyway? What is this manna? What is this? That's the Hebrew word. What is this? And again, on one hand, we're afraid in our own society here, occupied, we're afraid that we might not have enough. And then we're also deeply aware that God has always been with us, and God will continue to be with us. People have always struggled with security. People have always feared scarcity. And we all wrestle with understanding what is the meaning of daily bread. Third, pretend. Now I want us to pretend that we are the people on the earth right now. And you get to participate in this. So here in this sanctuary today, you represent all of the people of the earth. No, you are all of the people of the earth. So it's not that you represent, Charlie doesn't represent Africa or something. Charlie's just one person on the earth, and you are one person on the earth, and we are the only people on the earth right now. Everybody got it? We have needs for food, just like everybody. And we aren't in a desert, perhaps, as those on the hillside, but we get hungry also every day, and we, like them, cannot eat once and for all. We can eat until we're filled, and then it turns out a few hours later, we're hungry again. We require a lot. Our bodies are hungry again and again. So I want us to learn about how God has provided for us, the people on the earth. And so if you have a bag, if you received a bag, I'd like you to stand up or introduce yourself, right? Say your name, and then I want you to tell everybody how God has provided for you today.
My name is David. 3 packages of corned beef, 12 packets of Girl Scout cookies.
All of it. Oh, yeah. Don't leave anything out.
All right. 3 new Instapots.
We got 3 brand new Instapots, everybody. Woo. Okay.
6 loaves of soda bread. 3 kinds of mustard. 51 pounds of carrots.
It was supposed to be 5 pounds.
5 pounds of carrots. 6 heads of cabbage. And last but not least, 10 pounds of potatoes.
It's a great feast for you, Dave. I hope you enjoy it. Who else has a bag? Sorry, I saw you.
Oranges, bananas, 6 dozen eggs, strawberries, a new flat top griddle, coffee and cream and sugar, apples.
Is that everything? 6 dozen eggs. Did you say that one? There's more.
Okay, I think cost 2 or 3 more. Bacon,
Pork roll.
and croissant.
And croissants. All right. So she's got 6 dozen eggs, a whole bunch of salty meat. Who else? You got a bag? All right.
We're sharing a bag.
They're sharing because Doug's nice, but this is only for Doug.
All right.
God's provided today.
We are doing seafood boil. We have 2 large lobster pots, 12 lobsters, 4 pounds of little neck clams, and of course, if you're doing that, you need butter. So we have 2 pounds of butter. And for dessert, we have 3 cheesecakes from Madeline.
Okay. A feast, a feast. Who else has a bag?
I have salsa, guacamole, tortilla chips, 48 empanadas from Jimena, and Mexican hot chocolate with marshmallows.
Sounds like a fantastic meal. Who else has a bag? All right.
We have 2 pounds of butter and fancy olive oil, 5 cloves of garlic, 10 pounds of Yukon Gold potatoes and salt and pepper to season them, cauliflower, broccoli, carrots, and parsley, 10 pounds of roast beef, and a brand new oven to cook it in.
Anybody else? Yeah? All right. I come in.
Okay, I didn't like the first thing I saw here, but it gets better. 48 kosher hot dogs, sliced cheese, ketchup, a new Weber grill, Kaiser rolls, mustard, mayo, potato rolls, 48 hamburger patties, lettuce, tomato, pickles, Lucy's cupcakes for a crowd.
Lucy's Cupcakes. All right. Okay.
I've got 12 loaves of bread, a 6-burner stove, a gallon of half and half, 24 eggs, specialty teas, and 4 dozen tangerines.
How about bread? Oh, good. Okay. Thank you. She's making French toast. Just want to make sure we're catching. Did I get all the bags? Okay. Bags. Everybody's got bags. Stick with me, everybody. It's worth it. It's worth the trip.
I have lasagna and green beans with almonds and broccoli.
And cavatelli.
That's it. Nope, that's it.
Okay, all right.
I have a 22-pound roast turkey, 10 pounds of mashed potatoes, stuffing, coleslaw from Grandma, green beans and brown butter, a green salad, buttermilk biscuits, an apple pie, a pumpkin pie, and a tray of tiramisu.
I think the tiramisu was supposed to go with Nancy, but that's fair.
I have a lot of chips.
You have a lot of chips. Oh, she's got like 10 different or whatever, like lots of chips.
20 pizzas, 4 dozen buffalo wings, cut vegetables with ranch dip, and 10 half gallons of ice cream.
Anybody else? All right, so if you received a plaid plate, would you just, as you're able, maybe stand and turn around and wave to everybody, especially wave to the people at home? If you have a plaid plate, yeah. So on your plaid plate, you will have rice and beans, and maybe a slice of squash also for your daily bread. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, and the rest of you, you don't have to stand or anything, but maybe just raise your hand. Yeah, so that's half the world just has a cup of rice for the day. That's actually the distribution of food in the world, one day at a time. Does that make sense, the illustration that we just saw? Right? So 10% of the world is fed the way that the bags are fed. In one day, they have that much food, which also explains why we have freezers and storage units, right? Because we can't actually eat everything we're given for a day. And the plates, the plaid plates, that's 40%. What did I say? 10%. I'm just going to get it wrong. I assumed that there would be 60 people here. 10 people got bags. 20 people got plates. 30 people got a cup of rice. That is proportionately how God has provided for planet Earth and for the humans to eat each day. And so we struggle. We think we struggle with scarcity. We don't think, we do. We're afraid. We're afraid of scarcity. We're afraid that there will not be enough for me each day. And we live with that kind of scarcity on one hand. And then we also very much live knowing that God has provided for us, our ancestors, for us, and we believe God will continue to provide. And so the stories that we tell ourselves of scarcity are not true. There are stories, but they're not God's story, right? God's story understands that the honest truth is that everyone in this room is part of those 10, right? Like every one of us, just by nature of where we live and clean water and fresh air, and that none of us are going hungry today. So we all have so much that we can't possibly eat it in one sitting. And so we have to freeze it and store it. And then there are others, 50% of the world, that are hungry every day because they got a cup of rice. And all of us live with wondering, how will God provide? Is there enough? Will there be enough? How will we know if there is enough? And so I wonder, what is God's story? And what story have we told ourselves? And then I'd like us to play with our knots a little bit again. And this time, perhaps, take one of the darker ropes and untie a knot. And tell God what you think about how the world is provided for and how you are provided for. and ask God to tell you God's story. And then reach in to the light purple and tie a knot and tell yourself there is absolutely enough. There is absolutely enough. Let's play with knots.